You know those decisions that we make thinking we are doing the right thing, but that deep down end up becoming a trap. That's that. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is George, I'm 82 years old, and today I want to tell you something that can change the way you see old age. After much talk and pressure from my family, I left my home, the place where I had lived most of my life, and went to live in a nursing home in a city called Bristol. They said that there I would be safe, well taken care of, with company. But what I found was quite different. It was a heavy silence, a forced routine, and a feeling that I had ceased to be me. So if you are elderly or have elderly parents and think that a nursing home can be the solution, listen to this story until the end, because regret is a silent animal that only grows when we are silent. And I kept quiet for too long. It all started when I lost the woman of my life, Ellie. They spent 56 years together, sharing the same pillow, the same dreams, and even the same fears. When she left, it wasn't just her who disappeared. It was as if the house had also lost its soul. The sound of her footsteps through the kitchen, the way she laughed out loud watching soap operas, the smell of apple cake in the oven, everything disappeared. And there I was, alone in that old townhouse, surrounded by memories in Bristol. My children, Lucas and Emma, live in other cities. They even came to see me from time to time, but you know how it is. Work, grandchildren, busy life. Until one Sunday, Lucas called me to talk in the backyard. "Dad, we're worried. This house is big, it has stairs, and you are forgetting things." He mentioned the time I left the pot on the fire. I laughed, of course. Who has never forgotten something? But he was serious, and Emma had already researched a so-called senior residential. He said it was different, modern, with doctors, physiotherapy, activities, and security. "It's going to be good for everybody," he said. Those words moved me, because I was always everybody. 2 months later, on a sunny Saturday, I packed everything that was essential in a suitcase. I took with me only the things that talked about my past with Ellie, an old radio, some books, photos of her, and the coat she sewed for me in the 80s with her initials embroidered on the cuff. When I arrived at that residence, everything seemed too beautiful to be true. Smiles, fresh coffee, colorful posters with the month schedule, friendly people. My children were relieved. They took a picture with me, put it on social networks. Our hero will now have quality of life. And I tried to believe that. The room was clean, the patio well-maintained, the staff polite. But it was only in the first 2 weeks that this illusion lasted. Gradually, I realized that I was no longer in charge of anything. Everything had a right time. Coffee at 7, walk at 8, doctor in the quarterfinals, film on Fridays. Even the day to cut the nails was scheduled. I couldn't just say, "I'm not in the mood today." On any given day, I wanted to walk to the bakery around the corner. Nothing much, just stretch your legs. When I spoke to the employee, she smiled embarrassingly and said, "Mr. George, only with authorization from the management. You can't go out alone." I replied, "Oh, but do I live here or am I in prison?" And she just smiled without answering. At that moment, I stopped in front of the cafeteria window and looked down the street. I saw people passing by, laughing, living, and then I understood. That place could even take care of my body, but it was erasing who I was inside. I was no longer the George who fixed everything in the house, who made jokes in the cafe, who took care of the vegetable garden. I was just another number in room 104. And the truth, my friend, is that there is no security in the world that compensates for the feeling of not belonging anywhere. But the story doesn't end there, because I decided to react. And in the next excerpt, I'll tell you how I went from silence to freedom again. What hurt the most was not the locked gate outside. It was what began to lock itself inside me. It was as if, little by little, I was fading away. My children, who were once so worried, now barely cared. The visits turned into hurried video calls, and the calls turned into short messages. "Dad, it's all right there, right? Next week I'll call calmly." But this calmly never came, and I, who thought I was going to rest in peace, realized that I was disappearing, first of their lives, then of myself. The problem with living in a place where everything is done for your good is that without realizing it, you stop being someone. It becomes just one name on the cafeteria list. I tried, really. I went to the conversation circles, talked about the memories of my youth, did physiotherapy, played bingo. I even had friends there, Mrs. Olivia, who told jokes all the time, Mr. Frank, who only spoke of the Second World War, and sweet Nora, who spent the afternoons looking at the gate as if someone dear was going to appear. But over time, I began to feel the heavy silence of that place, a silence that was not of peace, it was of abandonment. The days inside were all the same. Wake up, eat, take the medicines, do an activity, sleep. The next day, everything repeats itself. The strangest thing? Nobody expected anything from me, nothing but following the script. I, who was a mechanic for 40 years, who played the accordion at family parties, who grew vegetables in the backyard, there I was, just one more. And the worst part? You start to die, little by little. I asked one day to go to the market to buy a package of coffee, percolator coffee, the kind that perfumes the house. The nurse replied, "Here we use soluble, Mr. George, it's more practical. You can't bring anything from outside without authorization." I tried to laugh jokingly. "It's a walk there in the square, can you?" She replied, "Only with an authorized companion. Menstruation, driving rules." That's when the penny dropped. I was no longer the master of my time, my taste, or my freedom. I was well taken care of, yes, but invisible. One night, having dinner with my colleagues, I asked the question, "You miss home?" Nora whispered, "I should never have come." Frank pretended not to hear. And Olivia said in that light way, "We get used to it." Those words stuck in my mind. We get used to it. Not choosing the time to sleep, not being able to buy what you like, waiting for the bell to ring to be able to eat. Seeing her children once a month, when they show up. To be treated like a child. "Have you taken your medicines?" And my kids kept saying, "Dad, this is for your good." But how can it be for my good if I was surrounded by people who were even sadder than me? People who didn't dream anymore. I felt like someone staying in a hotel where I never made a reservation. And the worst, they were forgetting me there. Before, Lucas called me every Sunday. Then it turned every 15 days. Suddenly, 3 weeks had passed without any contact. Emma sent short messages. "Hi, Dad. Everything all right?" One day I replied, "It's great. Only the heart is being forgotten." He didn't even answer, and even when they came in a hurry, bringing flowers and leaving quickly, as if I were an appointment in the middle of the busy schedule. And I smiled. He said that bingo was lively, that the food was good, not because it was true, but because I didn't want to appear ungrateful. But inside, I was withering, until that Sunday arrived. A sunny day which I had been waiting for weeks. It was my birthday. I dressed up with care. I put on perfume, straightened my hair, put on the blue shirt that Ellie said made me look good. I stood there on the balcony, looking at the entrance. Half an hour, 2, nothing. Until the employee came with a cake on a tray. And that's when everything changed. The employee came in with a simple muffin and said, "Happy birthday, Mr. George." I smiled and thanked him. He said that Claudia, or rather Emma, had sent it by app. But as soon as she left the room, I cried. I cried like a child. And it wasn't for the cake, no. It was because of something much deeper. The absence of myself in my children's lives. Lying on that hard bed, staring at the white ceiling, nameless, colorless, soulless, I asked myself, what am I doing here? How did I let them convince me that I was a nuisance? When did I accept this idea that I'm no longer good for anything? And it was on that night that I understood I hadn't just lost my home, I had lost my dignity, my freedom to walk barefoot, to listen to loud music, to be stubborn, to be me. Of being the George who taught his grandson to cycle, who planted tomatoes in the backyard, who serenaded Ellie. And at that moment I understood. If I wanted to meet that man again, I would have to get out of there. But how? At 82. Who has the courage to start over? I didn't know how, but I knew this. If I stayed, I would die in one piece, alive on the outside, but dead on the inside. Life has some cracks that we only notice when it's almost breaking completely. The first crack appeared on a gray afternoon. It was raining outside, and I was in the small library of the asylum, Sitting alone among half a dozen old books, I picked up any one, without even looking at the title, just to pass the time. In the middle of the pages, an old photo fell. It was a woman with a red scarf sitting on the porch of her house. On the back, the caption, "Donna Sita, on the balcony, 2003. That image caught me in a good way. It reminded me of Ellie, not because of her face, but because of the way she is there, owner of her own space. Ellie lived on our porch, drinking coffee and watching the street go by. It was from there that he said good morning to the neighborhood, called his grandchildren when it started to rain, laughed with life. I closed the book and leaned my head against the wall. I realized how long it had been since I had sat on a real balcony. Where I was, there was no balcony. It had an enclosed courtyard with railings, fences, and cameras. And the saddest thing, even from the outside, no one really saw us. That night, I dreamed of Ellie for the first time since I walked in. In the dream, she was in our kitchen, chopping potatoes and listening to music on the radio. He looked at me fondly and asked, "And our vegetable garden, George? Did you forget our vegetable garden?" I woke up with teary eyes and a squeezed heart. It was as if she had called me back to life. The next day, instead of sitting at the breakfast table, I stayed in a corner, just watching. I saw Mr. Frank repeating his stories, Olivia laughing at old jokes, and Nora looking at the floor with an emptiness in her eyes. And I thought, is this what I've become, an old man waiting for time to pass? I began to remember who I was. The mechanic who fixed the bikes in the neighborhood for free. The grandfather who made bird traps with his grandchildren. The man dancing bolero with Ellie in the middle of the room. And I felt angry. Anger at having accepted quietly. Anger at having believed that growing old is the same as ceasing to live. That same week, a scene broke me for good. It was Nora's birthday. The children sent flowers and a video. They gathered us in the living room to watch. On TV, her children appeared in a line, one by one, saying, "Congratulations, Mom. We love you, okay? When we can, we'll pass by." At the end, the nurse clapped her hands and said, "Exciting, isn't it, Mrs. Nora?" And she smiled. But that was the saddest smile I've ever seen. A smile of someone who has already said goodbye inside. I went back to the room and sat on the edge of the bed. I took my battery radio and turned it on. By chance, Nelson Gonsalves was playing The Return of the Bohemian, one of the songs that Ellie loved the most. That hoarse voice crossed me, and I cried. But it wasn't just any cry, it was not just sadness and revolt. For letting my story stop before the last page, for having quietly accepted that others would decide for me as if I were already finished. And the worst, for having believed that all that was for my good, just because it seemed safe. But there, in that silence full of invisible bars, I understood something that I'd never realized, not even in my strongest times. Freedom is not just a young thing. It is even more valuable when time is short. And my time, maybe it wasn't much, but it was still time. Time to live my way, time to make it count. I just needed to remember how to live outside the cages. That same night, I took a sheet of paper and began to write a letter. I didn't know if I would have the courage to send it, but I needed to say what was stuck in here. I began, "Lucas, Emma, the one who writes, is not the gentleman of room 104, medicated and monitored. He is your father, the one who taught you how to ride a bike, who told stories with the light off, who said that living in truth was more important than living in fear." I wrote for hours. Each word was like a sigh that I had been keeping for a long time. I put everything there, what I felt, what I remembered, what hurt, and what still burned like a live ember in my chest. When I was done, I folded it carefully and put it under my pillow. I stood there staring at the ceiling, thinking, either I reappear in my life, or I'll become just a faint memory in the lives of others. It was at that moment that the idea of leaving there, which had previously seemed crazy, became a plan. The next day, I woke up different. You know when we feel something heating up inside, like a spark lit in the dark? That was it, a silent but strong energy. I got up early, took a shower, calmly put on my best shirt, the white linen one, which Ellie said made me elegant. I combed the hair that was still left and, before leaving the room, put the letter in my pants pocket. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to scream. I just wanted to assert what I still had, my voice, my will. I walked to the reception. "Good morning, Mr. George," said the smiling girl. "All right," I replied firmly. "I need to talk to the coordinator." "Is it an emergency?" she asked. "Yes." "Freedom." She arched her eyebrows but called. Shortly after, I was already sitting in front of the coordinator, young, delicate, but with the look of someone who calculates time. "Well, Mr. George, is everything okay?" I said yes, and that's why I was there, because I wanted to leave. "Leave?" she repeated, surprised. "Leave where?" I replied directly. "I want to leave the residential to go back to living on your own." She sat back in her chair as if listening to something absurd. "But you're 82 years old." "I know," he said. "I was with myself yesterday, and I will be tomorrow too." She tried to argue. "You need care. Here there is routine, medication, follow-up." And I countered, "And outside of here, I have what you can't give me, self-will." She took a deep breath, took a card. "You signed a term of permanence, remember?" "Yes, I do," I replied. "Just like I remember the day I signed my wedding. Even so, I became a widower. Nothing is definitive." She was silent. I continued, "Look, I understand you're worried, but maybe we should talk to your kids first." "You can talk," I said, "but the decision has already been made." She looked at me as if she were facing a stubborn old man, one of those who are difficult to convince. And with an apology, he said, "But we need the family's permission." And there, at that moment, everything became clear to me. They didn't see me as an adult. They saw me as a family object, an old man, therefore, without a voice. I got up, took the letter out of my pocket and put it on the table. Give it to them. And then, with my head held high, I left the room. Because at that moment, I was going back to being me. I handed the letter to the coordinator and said, "Pass this on to my children, and tell me that if you want to see me, I'll be out of here soon. I don't know exactly where yet, but I know for sure where I won't go back, to this place that turned me into a shadow." She held the letter with a certain respect and asked, "But do you have anywhere to go?" I took a deep breath and replied, "I do. I have it inside myself. And for now, that's more than I had here." I left the room with my heart racing. I had no idea how I was going to solve everything, but for the first time in a long time, I wanted to do it. That same afternoon, I asked to borrow my cell phone from one of the nurses. He said it was to listen to music, but I actually searched for rooms for rent in Bristol, using the words "independent elderly room rental." I found the ad for a lady named Maureen. She rented a small room at the back of the house with a separate entrance, a small kitchen, and a garden full of flowers. Called. "Hello, Mrs. Maureen. My name is George. I'm 82 years old. Do you still have that room?" She replied, "Yes, I do, but it's simple, see? No luxury." Smile. "I've had luxury, madam. Now I want freedom." We talked for about 20 minutes. She said she preferred to rent it to someone quiet, who liked silence and plants. "So we're soulmates," I said, and I heard her hearty laugh on the other end of the line. We agreed that I would visit the place the following week. When I hung up, I stared at the ceiling of my room in the residential, but this time, not with sadness. What I felt was something different, something I hadn't felt in a while. Life. For the first time in many months, I had a plan of my own, something that was not decided by other people, that was not on the wall of activities on the wall. And it was simple. To live again. Not as a needy old man, but as a whole man, with history, will, name. I went to sleep lighter. I knew that the path would not be easy, because the world loves to say that an elderly person alone is a risk. But I was ready to face the world. 2 days after delivering the letter, the coordination's phone rang. It was Emma. The coordinator called me with a serious air. "Mr. George, your daughter is on the line. He said it's urgent." I picked up the phone calmly, took a deep breath. "Hello." On the other side came the distressed voice. "Dad, what is this that you are doing? Leave the residential?" "Lucas just sent me a picture of the letter. Did you write that right?" "Yes, I did," I replied firmly. She snorted, as if she were dealing with a teenager. "But Dad, everyone's treating you right there. You're taking your medicines. It's all right. Why leave now with this crazy idea?" I closed my eyes and said, "Because I'm tired, Emma. I got tired of living on a schedule that I didn't choose. I'm tired of being cared for like a fragile ornament. I want to live before all I have left is just to wait for death to come." He was silent. Then he said quietly, "Dad, you are 82 years old. And is there any age at which we lose the right to be the owner of our own life?" I replied. On the other end of the line, she cried. And look, that cry caught me. It touched me, but it also hurt. Because it wasn't a cry for me. It was a cry of someone who was losing control over my life. And that, deep down, was always what bothered me. It wasn't about my well-being. It was about their fear of dealing with a father who thinks, who chooses, who still feels. At the end of the call, she said, "Let's talk to Dr. Scott. See if you don't have some mental confusion. Dad, these ideas are not normal." I took a deep, firm breath and said, "It's normal to accept dying slowly just because it's more convenient for everyone. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just letting you know my decision." And I hung up. A few hours later, Lucas showed up at the residence. He came smiling, but the smile was yellow. "Hey, Dad, I heard that you are a bit rebellious." "It's not rebellion, son. It's just a desire to breathe without asking permission." He sat next to me. He tried to be calmer. "Dad, Emma was the phone, I know. But it's just concern. You fell twice last year. We just want to avoid the worst." And I looked him in the eye and said, "And the worst, Lucas? It is to die standing, without anyone noticing. You really think this is life?" He looked away. "Dad, answer me sincerely. Do you really want to leave? Living alone at 82, Dad. What if you get sick? What if it falls? What if I need help?" Ricardo tried to convince me with that voice that mixes fear and authority. And I, with all the serenity in the world, replied, "I may even die alone at home, Ricardo, but at least I'm going to die knowing who I am." He scratched his chin, uncomfortable. "Don't you want to think more calmly?" And I said what had been stuck for a long time. "I've thought too much, son. I spent months swallowing my will so as not to hurt you. Now it's time to live, even if it doesn't like it." The next day, Dr. Scott, sent by his family, appeared. They did all the tests: memory, reasoning, attention, notion of time. In the end, he smiled and said, "Mr. George, you are perfectly lucid, better than a lot of young people I see around." The coordinator swallowed. My children ran out of arguments, but when the excuses were over, the subtle attacks began. Emma texted me saying, "Do you have any idea of the sadness you are causing your grandchildren?" Bia cried yesterday, thinking that you were going to abandon the family. And Lucas called at the end of the day saying, "Dad, I've tried to be your advocate, but I can't stand by that. It seems selfish." And that's when the last penny dropped. The whole world thinks that when we get older, we lose the right to want. If the elderly person says yes, it is cute. If you say no, you are ungrateful. If you accept help, you are wise. If you seek independence, you are stubborn. I was neither one nor the other. I was just a man who knew what I was missing, and I wanted to get it back. The weekend before I left, they called me for a last attempt at a family conversation. They were all on the line: Emma, Lucas, even Bia and Gabriel. The attempt was, as always, to convince me to stay. "Grandpa, we love you very much," said Bia, crying, and I replied fondly, "And I love you, but to love is not to obey." "We miss you," Gabriel said. "And you'll keep feeling it," I replied, "but now you'll be able to visit me in a place where I own the key, where the door opens for me, and not just for those who take care of me." It was hard to say that, but sometimes the hardest truth is the only one capable of liberating. They gave up stopping me. I made an appointment with Mrs. Maureen to move in 3 days. The day before, I lay down, staring at the ceiling of the room one last time. The yellow light, the smell of disinfectant, the silence. Everything was very clean, very tidy. But deep down, it was a place where I was no longer me. But that night, I didn't feel angry, nor sadness. I felt proud. Proud that, at the age of 82, he had done what many younger people never had the courage to do: take charge of his own life, even when the whole world was screaming that it was too late. The day of the move dawned cloudy, but inside me, the sun was shining. I arranged to leave at 10 in the morning. Mrs. Maureen arrived with her son driving. When I arrived at the gate, the coordinator was waiting for me with an envelope. "Here are your documents, Mr. George, and good luck." I smiled and replied firmly, "Lucky? It's waking up and knowing that the day is mine." I sat in the back seat of the car, and through the window I saw the world as if it were the first time. The streets, the buses, the people walking in a hurry, the open shops. Everything seemed full of life. Maureen's house was simple, but full of soul. A quiet neighborhood in Bristol. The side entrance led straight to my new room. It had tile floors, a small window overlooking the garden, a small kitchenette. "Don't notice the mess, see? There are still some boxes around here," she said, with a shy smile as she opened the door. I entered slowly, and I took a deep breath. That was it. My corner, simple, but mine. I spent the whole day arranging my things. I put Ellie's pictures on the shelf, my books in a wooden crate. I hung my favorite coat on the closet door. And the most symbolic, I put my battery radio at the head of the bed. Night fell with silence, but it was a different silence. It wasn't the one that hurts, it was what he embraces. The next morning, there was no nurse knocking on the door. I woke up in my time at my pace. I got up, went to the kitchen, and prepared my own coffee with the powder I bought myself at the corner shop. Brewed coffee, strong, the way I always liked it. I buttered the bread, turned on the radio, and let Cartola sing for me. And there, between one sip and another, I felt something that had not appeared for a long time. Joy. Not a gaudy joy, no. It was small, discreet, but it was mine, real. In the following days, I was building my new life, a simple routine full of me. I walked around the block in the morning, took my cloth bag, bought fresh fruit. In the afternoon, he read on the bench in the square, wrote letters to his grandchildren, watched TV without guilt. At night, I wrote down my memories in a beautiful notebook that Mrs. Maureen gave me. It was like putting together a puzzle of my story. Soon I offered to help in the house. I repaired the front gate, the sink faucet, her old radio that I thought was lost. Even a wobbly chair gained new life. "Mr. George, you are a miracle here at home," she said. But the real miracle was here. I was remembering who I was. In the third week, I visited the neighborhood senior citizens club. I signed up for a domino group. I started laughing out loud again. Talk calmly. Say good morning to those who passed by. And even though my body got tired faster, my soul was lightweight. The children, of course, took a long time to accept. The first messages were full of guilt and concern. "Dad, are you sure you're okay? Dad, if you need it, we can still look for you." But over time, the messages changed. "Dad, you look happier. I saw the video of you playing the accordion in the group, how proud." Even the grandchildren came back together. Bea sent me a drawing with the caption, "For free, Grandpa." One day, Lucas came to visit me. He sat with me on the back porch. We stood there in silence for a while, looking at the herbs I started to plant, basil, mint, rosemary, until he said, "Dad, I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. "For having treated you as fragile when you just wanted to live. The truth is, I'm afraid of getting old, and I threw that fear on you." I looked at him fondly. "Son, the problem is not aging. It's to stop living while still breathing." He smiled. We stayed there, with the smell of the herbs and the singing of the birds. At 82 years old, I was no longer that man erased from the residence. Now I was your George, the stubborn, the free, the living. And if someone asked me what I achieved with all this, I would answer without blinking. My key, my door, my choice. If you saw me today sitting on this wooden bench with my cup of coffee in my hand and the basil tree next to it, you might not even recognize the man who entered that asylum months ago. But I recognize it. I know exactly who he was. He was a tired man, a man who, in mourning for his wife, forgot to take care of himself, who confused care with silence, who exchanged security for invisibility. But today, this man has become another. Wake up and choose the time to open the window. He drinks coffee as if celebrating his own existence. He walks around the neighborhood, talks to people who call him by name. No longer the Lord of Room 104, but is George, the retired mechanic who repairs fans, who plays the accordion at parties in the square, who still has a lot of stories to tell. A month ago, I received a special invitation. Mrs. Maureen called me to speak in the local church group. The theme was freedom in old age. Is it possible? My heart raced. I climbed into the small pulpit with a half-choked voice and began by saying, "Freedom, my people, is not a luxury. It is a necessity. We spend our whole lives trying to please, avoid fighting, doing what is expected of us. And one day he realizes that he forgot to ask, 'What about me? What do I want?'" There in that room, with more than 30 people listening to me in silence, I saw teary eyes. Some ladies nodded, moved. A lady approached after my speech, moist eyes and low voice. "My name is Marta. I'm 71 years old. Thank you, Mr. George. I live with my son, help with the kids, cook, clean." And I didn't even realize that I was fading away. His story reminded me that there is still time. I smiled with a full heart. "There is always time, Mrs. Marta. We just need to decide that now the time is ours." And that's exactly what I want to say to you, who came here listening to my story. You who may be there on the other side, afraid of seeming ungrateful. Who feels guilty for wanting more, even after so much sacrifice. You who have learned your whole life that being cared for is more important than being respected. I tell you with all the words, care without respect is prison. Help without listening is silencing. And love without freedom, it is not love, it's control. I don't blame my children, they just followed what the world teaches. That old man is a big child, that it is enough to give food, medicine, a clean bed. But I'm not a plant, I am people, and so are you. People with desire, with memory, with plans. At the age of 82, I learned that freedom does not mean not taking risks. Freedom is to have meaning in what you live. Yes, I can fall. I can forget a pan on the fire. I can even get sick alone. But I prefer to fall on my feet, being who I am, than to be whole in a place where I no longer exist as a person. Today, my relationship with Emma and Lucas is different. There is no more guilt, no obligation, no emotional blackmail disguised as care. Now, there is exchange, dialogue. They come to visit me without haste. They bring their grandchildren. They listen to me. They ask me for advice. And what moves me the most is when they say, "Dad, you have a different light." And I know it is the light of those who have come back into existence. Maybe you're experiencing something similar. Maybe I have a father, a mother, a grandfather, or maybe you're feeling erased yourself, as if at some point he had said goodbye to himself without even realizing it. If that's your case, I just want to tell you this. Dignity has no age. Autonomy does not expire. And the right to decide about one's own life, it is eternal. Even if the world tries to convince you otherwise, even if they call you crazy, ungrateful, irresponsible. Starting over sometimes is not a whim. It's a matter of survival. Because real living is never too late. Thank you for listening to me this far. If this story moved you, share it with someone. It may be that this person is waiting for a story like this, because sometimes all we need is a spark, a word, a report, to open a door that seemed locked forever. And if there is still a lock, it is because the key still exists. And believe me, this key can be in your hand right now. You just need to have the courage to rotate,